Hello and welcome to the Skill Point podcast, the podcast on a mission to level up the recruitment marketing industry. Today I am joined by Jade Brar-Haase, the marketing director of Murray McIntosh. Hello Jade, how are you doing?
Hello, yes, good, thank you. You?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. So to kick off, first question, would you like to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, sure. So probably coming up to 10 years in marketing, but about 7 years specifically in recruitment marketing, and working with other kind of brands to help with their employer branding. And I'm currently about to finish my MBA, thank goodness. And obviously my dissertation, that is basically about proving the value of marketing post-pandemic. So quite timely.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. And you reached out to me, didn't you? You wanted to have my input on your final dissertation that's coming up soon, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I'm probably a bit behind with that already. So thank you for reminding me.
No worries.
Absolutely. Basically getting people's perspectives on where they think value has changed post-pandemic.
So I think that would be a really good place for us to start, because obviously you've been doing the research on here and it sounds like a really interesting topic. So you're talking about the change in the market post-pandemic and what that looks like for marketing. Do you want to touch on it a little bit, overview?
Yeah, sure. So I think I've always been quite passionate about marketers, marketing departments, whatever guise they're in, proving that return on investment. I've always been quite passionate about that, and particularly the brand positioning side of things and how we value that. And so really it's about how COVID has just accelerated everything. And there's been a lot of shifts around that. I think internally the opinion of marketing has changed, which has been positive for a lot of people. I think, there was definitely an understanding with sales team and with other stakeholders in the business about, marketing can actually contact the people that we can no longer meet face to face. And we suddenly had an absolute plethora of channels in which to be able to communicate with our customers. And within that, our customers became more savvy. They were suddenly on platforms that they hadn't been on before. And we're trying to follow them around and understand where their preferences are. And I think that moves into, the 4.0, the technological shifts, the metaverse. And suddenly we found ourselves in a state of play where we've had to bounce back from COVID, but bounce back to a place that we were never in. So yeah, it's a really interesting time.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And there's just been like a digital transformation, really, hasn't there, in the market, and especially with online and Zoom and the explosion of things like podcasts, for example. It's a different place we're in now, isn't it? I completely see that. So one of the things that we sort of touched on before was your point around marketing seems to shy away from the bigger questions. And I completely agree with you on that. I think that is definitely well deserved. But do you want to just break that down a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's about accountability and responsibility within the marketing team. And that filters from everybody, from, the most senior marketer all the way down to the executive. The executives have a responsibility, if they're looking after social media, to monitor and manage how their internal campaigns are doing. And then you've got the people perhaps at the top of that food chain, which are looking over everything. And they're having to justify the market share and their brand positioning and maybe what their scores are like. And I think there's been a lot of marketers that shy away from being able to prove return on investment, and potentially they're worried to be able to say what value their brand is. Some of that comes down to skills and making sure that we're also upskilling our marketing teams. There is a lot of training that we have in finance and in sales, but sometimes marketing can get left behind with training, when really you think it's probably the fastest moving department within our business to be able to keep up. But there is also a flip side of, I thinking, there being a confusion over what we're measuring, how we're measuring, and how we're communicating. When we refer to stakeholders, sometimes there's a silo where we think our stakeholders is just the board, or it may just be our customers. Well, actually, it's a mixture. The stakeholder is also the person sitting next to you within the sales department. You've got somebody sitting in finance, which is looking at your budget. So it's actually about how we're communicating with those people and what value they want from us. And I think that's probably the first big hurdle.
And how do we achieve that?
Communication, it goes back to what we know. I think listening is probably the first thing, especially if you're a way off from having marketing together, working in harmony. It's just about listen and actually getting sales to understand that marketing is there to provide a service as if they are an external client. We work for sales. However, I caveat that before a sales department turns around to their marketing and say, you work for me, that there is a trade-off with that. Yes, we work for sales, we work there to provide, to enable them to reach their goals and the company that makes more money. However, the sales team need to give back and respect then the function of marketing and give them the data and the insights that they need. So when the marketing department is saying, okay, can you tell me where this lead came from, rather than just finishing the sales call and saying, oh, I think they called in, we need to be going deeper into that, into the origin of that lead. So it's getting the two teams to work together and understanding what metrics are important. For sales, it might be how many leads we're getting in, how many of those leads are qualified, and also what is the lead value. Whereas somebody from a board level perspective, depending on who it is in your boardroom, they might be more interested in, okay, what's the market share compared to our competitors? What does the competitor landscape look like? Are we in a red ocean environment? Are we a blue ocean environment? How are we differentiating ourselves? So it really depends on who you're talking to and thinking what metric is valuable to them and why is it valuable? How do we prove the value?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just comes down to, I think a lot of the time marketers come into board meetings and they'll talk about number of followers or likes or stuff like that, and you can see the directors get that glazed expression on their face. All they want to know is it working. And I think if you can properly understand the senior leadership and what they just want to see, you'll just become just a point in the meeting and then they can move on. Instead of what happens, I think a lot of the time, is the directors think there's something wrong with marketing and they go in and they need to get involved and it becomes a whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, when we talk about marketing, we talk a lot about the activities, what's being done, and less so about the measurement. And the metrics come in as a way of measuring, but we need to review what metrics we're using. There's no point reporting on everything and, taking a day to build this massive report that really there's only two key metrics. Let's take time to review what is worth measuring. It comes back to that cost benefit. Is it worth me taking a day's worth of time to build this massive report for the executive team that, quite frankly, they're only interested in that last number at the bottom? Actually, no, I could be spending my time reviewing what metrics it is that we're doing and how we can improve those. And I think if anybody is ever worried about trying to prove things such as brand value, I would then maybe come at it from the other angle and say, if we don't do this, we will lose X. So I think coming out of COVID, 2% of long-term revenue was actually lost through poor branding. So it's not hitting you straight away, but that long-term revenue that you can see down the line that you're hoping there's blue skies, if you're not investing in it right now from a brand awareness point of view, 2 years on, you've then lost that 2%.
And for you, what are some of those sort of key metrics that you would sort of present to the senior leadership team, as well as the sales team as well?
I think it's the number of leads that you've got from various channels versus what those channels have cost you internally, both in terms of time and value. And it's the value of those leads. So you might have one channel that is performing really well, but actually the value of those leads is kind of in the 2% where you don't want to be. And I think if your leadership team is comfortable in its position to take a stance and say, actually, we don't want business that is operating at this, we want to be focusing more on the big fish, then actually, even though it's performing, it's time to say goodbye to that channel and start investing in new channels or new processes where you can start to nurture and you can start to see the activity building up.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned a second ago about measuring your brand's awareness and maybe the reputation as well, what are some key stats that you sort of rest your hat on with that?
I think a lot of it comes down to communication. A lot of this is also in the sales communication. When they're speaking to people, they'll quite often say, oh, actually, I saw that white paper that you sent out the other day. Oh, yeah, I saw that campaign on social media. Being visible, making sure that people know what you stand for, that people are leaders and experts within our business, and making sure that we communicate that. If we're not experts in it, then we shouldn't be communicating about it. I think from a brand positioning perspective, I've always kind of aligned to the value discipline model, where you can excel in one, which is service, product leadership, and you can go into each area of the triangle and you can really excel there. And I think brand positioning is something that touches everyone and everything within our business. It can't be one department or one activity. Is something that you continue to build, and you define a standard between you, which is acceptable or not acceptable.
And do you feel like it's marketing's job to make sure the reputation is matched across the board on things like consultants' personal brand on LinkedIn, as well as like other collateral or maybe touch points via email with communication?
I think it's our job to educate and to be passionate about it. I think we sit there I'll always say that marketing is how you ask somebody on a date. The brand is the reason they say yes, which is why it's really important.
I really like that.
I always try and use that motto. And when we talk about marketing, we never really use the brand word. We kind of throw it around. Actually, it should be the other way around. And I think that the branding, we should be passionate about it. It's something we create and we work towards every single day to protect and to build and to make credible to all of our stakeholders, internal and external. And I think if people aren't understanding why it's important that that document is reviewed before it's gone out, it's about educating them as to the value of brand. If you're a recruitment agency and you're charging premium percentages on your permanent contract recruitment, well, why? Yes, there's going to be elements of your process that are more premium, but it's probably because you look very good to the clients and candidates. You're an extension of their employer brand at that point. And if you don't look very good, you're not going to have these big fish wanting to be represented by you. And you sending them a document that looks like it's just come out of paint of a year 7 assembly, that's not ideal.
No, it's the whole perceived value kind of point, isn't it? I think, and that is the true value, that kind of making things look very snazzy, but also the message is on point. And marketing plays the biggest role in that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're meant to be passionate about it. We're meant to big it up. We're meant to make it big. That's our responsibility and our commitment to the company. And equally, I think if you're not passionate about the brand that you're working under, you probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one piece of advice from you for a busy marketing manager, obviously, because you've done 10 years now in marketing, that's very impressive, and you've survived recruitment marketing for this long. But as we know, it is a extremely stressful and high-paced environment, isn't it? And you can get pulled in a million different directions. We just, in this intro, we just jump between metrics, reporting, communicating with sales team, and then also brand messaging. And it's just that's literally a slither of the pie. So you get a lot of hats that you have to put on. How do you manage that? How do you personally manage that?
I love a list and a spreadsheet. Those have got me through the years, and I'm like that as well. I love a spreadsheet and a list, because I think I'm more productive from a list, because I can see myself ticking things off and what I've been working through. So in marketing, you very rarely have people tell you that you've done a good job. You've got to be self-propelling. And you've got to reward yourself. And if that reward is ticking 5 things off and having a brownie or grabbing a coffee, then you need to reward yourself for having that progress, because actually marketing as a department will have the least reward than any other. And if you're sat there and you're waiting for somebody to say, oh, do you know what? That LinkedIn poll was brilliant. Did you see how many engaging? It's very unlikely to happen, and you'll be waiting a long time. I think with the organizational perspective is key. if you don't have the listing, you don't have the organized, and everybody has a different way of working. But I think organization is key, because coming back to where we said about providing value to the stakeholders and your consumers, if you can organize your day, which allows you to have 20% of being reactive, so that a salesperson comes to you and says, I've had this great meeting, but I don't have a brochure about this because I'm not really sure how to talk about it. And you can then give them that time back within 24, 48 hours, because you've structured your day right. You're providing value to another team member. And when you go to those board meetings, you can say, actually, we whipped up this document to help so-and-so get X across the line, which has now represented £15,000 worth of revenue for the business. So I think by being organized and being structured, it allows you to respond to those last minute opportunities that we all know marketing gets all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you've touched on there, because I think a lot of the time when you say proving return on investment, you just think lead generation. But obviously that is a very difficult thing to do, especially in our market. And especially as, like you've touched on in your dissertation, the market is definitely changing. And being able to actually, I think marketers a lot of the time will, whip up these presentations or brochures or decks or anything like that, but they just won't include that in their report, or the directors will not know that happened. And I think that's a really good way of just saying, yeah, we're actually helping close these deals, maybe not through the traditional means of someone submitting a form, but actually we've produced content that's helped get that over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a way of supporting the business to reach its end goal, whether it comes through marketing and sales. And this is another really important point. It doesn't matter where the lead comes from. If everybody's contributed to get that over the line, that's the end result. And so when we talk about sales and marketing, we also talk about them as if they're opposing sides of the war and they're battling against each other and going, oh, that's one mine, I own this. Actually, it should be a collective. If there's leads coming in, but we need something extra to get them across the line. Okay, well, what is it? Let's build it together. Because also, I'm not an expert in the areas that they're recruiting. We've got 4 different areas in our business. I'm not an expert in any of them. So I rely on them to get that fountain of knowledge so that I can take it, I can build it into something, and then we can work to make sure that it's of, leadership standard together.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? A lot of the conversations we have, this point comes up. It's just, but I like to call it, you don't have a sales and marketing department, you have a revenue department, and they should work in tandem that way. But the issue is, like, it comes up so much in the podcast, so it is a serious sticking point. Do you think this is something that you saw a big divide in when you first joined Murray McIntosh?
I think prior to Murray McIntosh, in my previous business, it was quite a big divide, but I spent a really long time there making that work. And when it worked, it was amazing. And we got to a point where actually it was just a joint team, and we were that marketing team, and it was brilliant. Even the top biller that doesn't have the time of day to talk to marketing was suddenly thinking, actually, where marketing works from home, I can see them as my PA for 9 hours, and they can do everything that I need them to do to get my stuff over the line, which was brilliant. I think coming into Murray McIntosh, it was very much the guys kind of had their own silos, their own business, very much separate. In Aero Professional, everybody was in aviation recruitment. In Murray McIntosh, everybody is very different. So it's about understanding all of those. And yes, I didn't come in at the point where there was a handover. I came over kind of assessing, okay, does marketing exist? Where are we at? What do we have? And then listening to them to understand where we needed to be, and really thinking, okay, this is the state of play. This is where we're trying to get to. What's missing? But I think most recruitment agencies, certainly in the last couple of years, if you have gone into them, there's always that disconnect between the two. And I think that only comes, it's not a quick process. I think that comes in time of education, communication, and that respect and understanding what it is that each other does.
Fantastic. And if you was to give some advice to a marketing manager that is seeing a divide and wants to close the gap, what would you say?
I would say listen, firstly, because that's probably, sometimes they might feel that you're always going to them saying, okay, we're going to do this, but you haven't considered how their existing clients might feel or what their take on it is. So I think listen and understand that. Ask them where they think the gaps are. Obviously, they will, you're an expert in your own right as a marketer, and they have a lot of experience to be in sales. So yes, there are going to be some things that they forget or they don't understand. And as part of that conversation, you can explain why you're doing it a certain way, the fact that you're living and breathing the marketing every day, and listen to this colossal change that's happening behind us. And you're trying to bring that into the business. And then I think lastly, decide what's worth fighting for. There will be a lot of things that you want to change and you want to do. And in marketing, we like change. It's positive. We need change to grow. In sales, less so. I speak, kind of on the whole there. But there tends to be, this is the way I've always done it. It's a numbers game. I'm just going to call, I'm going to do this. If you're taking time away from me, I'm not interested. But I think if you can decide the real golden nuggets that are worth fighting for and worth that time in education and sitting down with them, those will be the ones that you win. And the more you start winning and they start seeing that actually that half an hour spent with marketing has given me X commission in my pocket, you will start to thrive together. And ultimately the company is going to make more out of that.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think it's worth picking out sort of champions in the sales team to sort of work with and hold up your banner for you?
I do, in a sense that probably from a campaign or for topic specific. One of the things I've done before is like social media heroes. So the people that are really engaging with the company content, sharing it, liking it, putting videos up, putting pictures up, are really going the extra mile to get testimonials that we can use. I've done that as quite a good thing. In AeroPro, similar, it was the people that took on the most marketing leads. So basically whoever captured them in the quickest amount of time got X, and we kind of built that up in a pot. I think my only reluctance to do competitions in that sense is we've all got a responsibility to act on what comes in and to appreciate other departments. Yes, competitions are good, particularly in a sales environment. But there also comes a time where you can't be expected to give a reward for everything. Marketing is a level department. It gives a lot to the business, and people need to give back to it as well without expecting to get a reward of everything.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I love that. And that's a nice nuanced way to think about it for sure. So I think we're kind of moving nicely into another sort of question set that we discussed pre-hand, and it's because how long have you been at Murray McIntosh now? Is it just over a year?
No, it'll be almost 2 years.
Oh well, yeah, nice. So I've known you, Jade, from when you was at Aero and I was at TRN. I remember, I think you came to a couple of the training sessions, didn't you? And I think we met at a huddle or something like that. And it was great to see you evolve and grow and start the new role. One thing that I'm always super curious of, because I think a lot of the time marketers do move around recruitment agencies, but it's always a huge challenge, isn't it, when you join a new company? What I'd like to know is, what were your first days like? What was on your agenda coming into Murray McIntosh?
I think, as I mentioned, when I came in, there wasn't really marketing. It wasn't established. So there wasn't a handover or picking up from somebody. So I think it was really just assessing the state of play. Where are we? What does this look like? And then that kind of merged into assessing what tools and what things we were investing in. There were a lot of things that I stopped us investing in straight away. It's like having loads of cars but not really being able to service them or drive them. There's not really much point, and it's kind of just wasted money that could be spent elsewhere. And in a time where we weren't really doing any marketing, it didn't really make sense for marketing to consume that budget. It just didn't need to be spent, or it could have gone to another department. So reducing that, and then understanding what was it that the sales team wanted, first and foremost. What did they feel was missing, and what did I feel was missing from the brand? I was coming at it also from an outsider perspective. What were the questions that I had that I couldn't identify through the website or through brochure decks or through those initial touch points? and where did we need to plug? And I think that molded into kind of a hybrid of firefighting, of just trying to say, oh, we do have marketing, let's just sort this out, as well as building kind of a plan which had actions for now, 3 months, 6 months, and looking at that plan. And, you know, don't get me wrong, at that 6 months mark, we were kind of looking at different things, and we had evolved, and we had a couple of different campaigns on the go. But I think, as with anything, your objective, the end goal, stays the same. And while we talk about structure, that's not necessarily rigid. The route to getting there is different. And that doesn't mean that you don't review and you don't monitor and you don't measure. It's just that it's a very fluid structure. Your end goal is still the same. So I think, yeah, it's really about assessing, refining tech stack, tools, and then getting to a place of saying, okay, I've now had time to identify the plan, and these are the problems, but this is how we can move forward.
Great. Yeah. And you called that like the investigation period. What I really quite like that. Do you think it's important to communicate this with the senior leadership team, that this will be something that you will go through, that there may be quick wins, but there are some critical things that we need to get in place first in terms of strategy and looking at what needs to be taken out and what needs to be added?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they should be being a part of that investigation period themselves, having that conversation with them. They are not a part of it. You know, if they want it to work, they need to feed into it as well. And I think any good process or any good system internally involves the people at the top. It also requires their buy-in and their understanding. And I think gone are the days where marketing didn't sit in the boardroom and it was just sales. If you're still operating in that fashion, that's not ideal. I'm not really sure how you're expecting your middle management teams to level up and to work together if you haven't got a representation from the top. So I think 100% they need to be a part of that. Yes, they may not need to be in the nitty gritty. They're busy, they've got things to do, but they need to be visible, and they obviously need to hear about the outcomes. And ultimately, the right stakeholder team will listen to that, will take it on board and go with your direction.
Fantastic. And integrating structure and strategy into an existing business, I'm sure that came with some challenges, and building a marketing plan from the beginning. What were some of the pain points and some of the things that you came across to start off with that you overcame?
I think personally for us, it was about as I mentioned, there's 4 very distinct areas within the business. And I think the challenge, which I felt from listening to it, was, yes, everybody's wanting to make sales, but the target audience is very different. They're working in very different markets. And just because one activity or a particular campaign worked for one area of the brand, it didn't mean that it worked for the others. But we were kind of in a position where if the majority wanted that activity and it worked for them, that's what we would do. And yes, maybe from a time point of view, that's more effective. But from an everything else point of view, that's not effective. You know, it's like comparing that to a mass market email when really there's only 10 people that are interested in the email that you sent to 10,000. We don't do that anymore. So I think it was understanding from a bigger perspective. This wasn't just a case of going in and saying, okay, let's do an email campaign. It was very much looking at the structure of the brands, and how our target audience is, plural, how they see us, and how we need to be communicating with them.
Right. And I think you're starting to touch on that kind of market research. What I think is a huge skill that is super underutilized. How did you go across achieving that and figuring out what works well for the micro brands? And we will touch on sort of the split up of the brand and how that looks like later as well.
Yeah, I think from a market mapping perspective, I think a lot of people just jump into it and they say, okay, I think we need to look like this. Why do you need to look like that? And who else is looking like that? Who else is not looking like that? And obviously throughout my MBA, each 6 modules that I've done, and certainly my dissertation, there's a huge amount of research that comes before putting pen to paper. And a lot of that is on things like competitor analysis, competitive landscape, marketing mapping, SWOT analysis, PESTEL, all of these different models that have been there forever. And they kind of just don't get used in the workplace. And yes, they take time to fill out, but the amount of information that we gather from them on our own business and what's happening out there in the macro environment is really, really important to understand, and to keep reviewing them while you're going through that process, because things are changing at a rate of knots. You can't just do it once and then come back to it a year later. That's just not going to suffice. So I think undertaking that is really important. I think using models like that, but twisting them to work for the modern age. Take two models, blur them together, and actually have an overlaying map view of things like digital tools. Where else in the digital landscape is your competitors? And starting to do things that actually consumers are more aware of now. On the social platforms, are you doing specifically a social audit to see how many times a week your competitors are posting? How many followers have they got? How is that follower rate growing over time? What's their engagement like? It's not just this blanket thing. We need to get lenses and we need to really drill down to truly understand what's happening.
Yeah, and really like that actually, just because a lot of the time you'll just do a quick SWOT on the competitors, probably only really focus on opportunities where you can kind of one up them a little bit. But I think actually looking at their output and their sort of activity can really give you a bit of a baseline, can't it, on where you can just take it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. They're there to help you identify where you are, but also the opportunities and threats that are coming up in the market. It's there for a reason, so that you can plan and you can try and stay ahead of either making more market share or stopping something bad from happening to your own business. It's about evolving. Yes, they're old methods, but their purpose is to help you evolve and grow and stay aware of what's happening.
Yeah, great. And do you put much time in your diary to do kind of research, kind of strategic thinking? Because a lot of the time you'll find you do your strategy at the beginning of the year, or maybe the year before towards the end, and then you kind of leave it, don't you? That's it. You've kind of done your bits, and then you just get on with the day to day.
Yeah, I think I'm probably guilty of not doing as much of the reading on what's happening. When you sign up to Marketing Week, you get all those news bulletins. I'm probably guilty of storing them and saying I'll come back to them, because there's so much content in them, and the time to go through them does take a big chunk. And I would always encourage, before, when I had marketing executives working with me, I made sure that they carved time out of their diaries to go and read these articles. And I'd say, find something on YouTube to learn a new marketing skill and go and take that time to develop. And while I really, really made sure that they did that, I was guilty of not doing that myself, which I think we can all kind of be a bit like that. But I would say, from a strategic perspective, this will be my third degree now. My last one as well was in marketing. I've spent a huge amount of my time in work studying at the same time. So my evenings and weekends are spent looking at other businesses, looking at their strategy from not just marketing, but other areas. So I think I've always kind of got one eye on that, and everything that I learn and consume, I'm trying to embed in the day to day.
Yeah, I really like that.
Definitely from hearing what went on yesterday, I'm sometimes a bit too busy, where I should probably make a bit more time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a problem all of us have, isn't it? But I think that's amazing what you're doing in terms of doing degrees and trying to skill yourself up outside of the workplace, because ultimately that just brings more value to where you're working and makes your life easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think certainly in the MBA, obviously, it is across everything. And yes, with the modules and the dissertation obviously have a marketing and brand stance on them, but it comes back to that conversation of communicating with your stakeholders. And really what this has enabled me to do is understand more of what my stakeholders are doing in their day-to-day business and how we can communicate with them from a marketing department. What is it that they're interested in, what are their focuses, and how can I appreciate and work alongside that. So I think that that's really important to take away from education, not just what you're interested in, but what your peers are.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Jade, you're a really good case study of someone that's earned that seat on the table that a lot of people really want to attain. You know, if you've got someone, I know we've touched on a few things here, but maybe you've got an extra nugget of wisdom. What would you say to someone that wants to, you know, take that next step and sit on the board level, become a marketing director, not an executive or a manager?
I think you've got to, as I said, you've got to keep pushing and you've got to be self-propelling. You've got to have the dedication to not just want to educate others around you, but also keep educating yourself. Marketing is fast-paced as it is. So alongside your personal development, that kind of development along with digital transformation, Metaverse 4.0, and any other tool that is coming up daily, I think you've just got to have that momentum to stay behind. And I think when you come across people that are, you know, wanting to be on that journey with you, or saying, actually, you know, just when you get some resistance, I guess it's about powering through that and saying, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. I'm on this plan, I'm on this path. And as with marketing, your path may shape slightly, but your end goal, if that's to be sat in the boardroom and talking with other senior stakeholders within the business, then actually if you're really trying for that and it's not happening, then maybe the stakeholder team that you're trying to penetrate isn't where you need to be. You know, marketing is a hard enough job. If you're getting a seat on that table and still nobody has a buy-in for marketing, then I would probably suggest that it's about time you take yourself and you go to a business that is ready to listen to marketing. They may not understand it, but they're ready to listen and go on that journey with you. And I think just keep pushing forwards, keep educating yourself and trying to educate, not patronize, but educate the people around you as to why marketing and brand is important.
Amazing. Yeah, really good. And, you know, what attribute do you think, because you've touched on a few there, but which do you feel like there's the key one that's made you, you know, a success from, you know, where you're standing now as a marketing director? What do you think is your core driver? You know, do you set yourself clear objectives personally to get to places, or is it the tenacity, etc.?
Yeah, I think the self-propelling, the work ethic. You know, we're young, we've got time to work hard. You know, you can rest when you've got to that point, and you've achieved what you need to do. You can look back on it, but right now there's no reason for me not to work the evenings, the weekends. And, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, you know, I don't know what the rush is, chill back, take your time. But that hasn't got me to where I've got. So I'll continue to do that despite, you know, what other people say. And I think you know, you've just got to keep pushing forward. It comes down to the work ethic. Don't make excuses, is the bottom line. I'm often said I can be quite cutthroat when it comes to that kind of thing, but I just think don't make excuses. The only person that is going to get you in that seat or where you want to be is you. So don't rely on somebody else to help you on the way. If you get help, great, but it's all looked down on you, really.
Yeah, really like that. Yeah, and you know, I'm exactly the same as a, you know, young business owner. I'm working all hours under the sun. Not that I advocate for it, because it isn't particularly healthy. But you know, how do you personally get your work-life balance? I'm still trying to work mine out, so I'd love to know yours, really.
I think I enjoy work. So, you know, it's not a case I go, oh God, it's a Monday. I actually quite like a Monday. I go into the office on a Monday. It sets me up for the week. I think work-life balance, as I said, if you don't love the brand that you work on, that work-life balance will eat away. You'll be looking at the clock thinking 5 o'clock. Equally, if you're clock watching, you probably haven't got enough activity going on. You're kind of wanting the day to go away. If you're passionate and you're self-propelling, you will find stuff to fill that time. And then you'll kind of get lost in those activities. I think work-life balance, yes, it is important. And I think at Murray McIntosh, I'm fortunate enough to have a director that understands that work-life balance with his team. Everybody works really, really hard. But, we really enjoy the rewards. And one of the rewards is I've worked tirelessly with the team for almost the last 2 years. I had a very delayed honeymoon that I just got back from, and I was out of the office for a month. To appreciate everything I'm given in the last 2 years, the team just didn't really disturb me. They were like, we're not going to contact you. We want you to go away and enjoy it. And yes, come back and it's crazy. And before I left, it was absolutely mental. But I had that time, and that's what I'd been working towards from a personal level. But now I'm back. I'm happy to be back into it. Am I going to look at something in an evening and a weekend? Yes, because I like my job. I want to help the team. But that's just me. It doesn't have to eat into your life. But if you're passionate about something, it probably will.
Yeah, I like that. I completely agree. If you find something that, really sparks that inspiration inside you and gives you the drive to do it, and you're not watching the clock, then it isn't work really. And it's the same with me. I'm happy to put in the hours because I love the work that I create and the clients that I work with. And, sometimes it doesn't even feel like work. It's just feels like you're creating, doesn't it? It feels like you're an artist sometimes.
I think if you have that, it comes back to I keep banging on about respect and understanding the stakeholders and the people that you work with. But, if I was asked, okay, we've got this late on in the evening, can you help the guys on US hours? Yes, I would, because we all give back to each other. And I know that other people are working late to make stuff happen, and there's that mutual respect. So actually, you wouldn't need to ask somebody in our team, could they work later to do this? Because the chances are they probably would, because they want to help the cause. We want our directors and our senior team to do well. We're not just in it for ourselves. So yeah, I think it's that culture that you build as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to Murray McIntosh. I believe you was part of splitting it up into 4 brands. Was it just the one brand to start off with, and now it's the 4? Is a Murray McIntosh group now?
Yeah, so when I joined, it was Murray McIntosh, Murray McIntosh Associates, and now we've kind of taken that back, and we've got Murray as the main brand, and then within that we've got 4 defined verticals. So we've got policy by Murray, water by Murray, engineering by Murray, and technical talent by Murray. Technical talent being our new US arm for services out there, and that was a really big change, but I think a really welcome change. Prior to discussing that, the stakeholders of those verticals were really on board, and I think one of the really good things that came out of it, and that we started talking about on that journey, when I had the presentation and I said to the guys, okay, this is how we're going to split, this is what we're going to go at, and these are the benefits are, not only does it have benefits for the business, for marketing, for them, but it allowed us to put accountability on that department. So if you give back to marketing and you go away and you get your testimonials for the new website and you craft your case studies and we work together and you give back to marketing, your website's going to look the best. If you're not giving back, your website's not going to look very good. So it allows them to work as if it's their own business. Kind of the model that we have is marketing is here as your outsourced service provider. I'll work with you, I'll build the website, I'll deliver that, I'll do the different campaigns. If you want something, you can come to me, we can talk about the project for your specific vertical, the different tactics that we're going to use specific to your audience. Equally, if I haven't heard from a department in 2 months, I'm not going to go over and chase them and say, oh, can you give me something? I'm just going to give more love and attention to those verticals that are really putting in the effort to push their brand with me. So I think it's created a really strong presence of we are experts in X, Y, and Z. good accountability within our team, and from a marketing perspective, going back to that management and the organization, the structure, how do we move forward, it's also easier to manage in that. Yes, it's more time consuming because I've basically got 4 clients I'm working with rather than just one, but the results are better.
Right. And I think this is the trajectory of many recruitment agencies that have multiple sectors they recruit in anyway down the line, that they do split off like this. And then you do have the hiring managers end up taking that role in terms of kind of running that mini company. And then I think you're also touching on something we've discussed in one of our other episodes, was your marketing functions should kind of be set up as like a mini marketing agency within your business, shouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, it's not just the marketing, it's then the services that fall out the back of that, such as our content strategy, PR, email. Yes, we've got email automation, but actually, what does that look like for the guys in the US? What do those emails look like? The tone of voice, the content, the sending times, the throttling is going to be completely different to maybe our policy team that operate in the UK. So it's understanding how each of them has a defined brand and their guidelines, if you like, for their brand. They all sit within Murray and we've all got that minimum standard, but within that there's flex.
Yeah, fantastic. And let's take it back a little bit. So let's go to the beginning of breaking it into the groups. What did that project look like? And what were some of the maybe mistakes or things that you learned along the way that you would do differently next time?
I think we always had defined departments. We maybe had a slightly little bit more definition from like an engineering perspective into how that would work, but it's always been clear that there's different areas of the business. I think one of my passions within the brand positioning things is like website development. I like to design websites, the user experience and what comes out of that. I've built and designed a lot of websites myself, so I'm really passionate about that side of things. And I think just looking at what was going out in the market, coming back to that market mapping, the competitor analysis, doing all of that, we conducted all of that, not just from a recruitment perspective, but also for the specific verticals. So having a look at, okay, water engineering, what does your state of play look like? And assessing that. And from out of that, I just started to look at different creative ideas and how it could work. And I thought, oh, okay, this could work here. And over time, it just kind of developed. And then ultimately delivering a presentation to the team and saying, okay, we've had a bit of a discussion about this here or there. This is what it looks like. These are the next few milestones. And after these milestones, we're going to sit down again and look at where we're at. And then from that point, I then just started working solely with the different verticals, and we didn't really sit down as a group together, because from that point they're their own business with their own website, propelling themselves forwards.
Yeah, I love that. So it started off with market research, and then you did a little bit of like a branding activity for each sort of micro brands.
Yes, absolutely. So dive in with the research. We had a look at it from a general recruitment perspective, and I mapped that onto positioning. So where we want to be, we're a premium brand. That's how we position ourselves. So who else is positioning themselves there? What makes us different? Looking at the differentiators we might have as Murray before then breaking that down and having the differentiators for the different brands. And then basically starting to do the competitor analysis, but for the specific verticals. Which was really interesting as well, because obviously they are very different. Policy and water engineering couldn't be further apart.
Yeah.
And also they've got different service offerings. So on our policy website, we talk a lot more about our retainer solution and how that benefits the client. Whereas water engineering, we've got IR35 contracting models, umbrella companies, very different. So you can imagine before, when that was one website, how it was very, very complex to understand. And I think probably touching on that point, the biggest thing was to say, where are the holes in our current website? Not just from an external perspective, but also internally. How much can we update the website? I cannot stress enough, there is no point building a website and then leaving it and then coming back to it, because you're just going to end up spending thousands of pounds redoing it. You need to keep it updated and moving with your business. So if you haven't got a CMS in which enables you to do that, or you haven't partnered with a company where you've got that flexibility and reactivity to call up and say, hey, look, we need to quickly build this page because this is happening and so is going out on a meeting and wants to refer to this in his presentation, that's a bit of a problem. Everything needs to be able to move at the speed of your business, just like, you know, your internal documents and your staff move with the speed of what's happening in the environment. So yeah, I think that's actually a really important point, looking at your website, decide why it doesn't work both internally and externally, and making sure that you tick those off as well.
And personally from you, do you think a website is a seriously critical part of a modern recruitment agency?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I think your website is your online yellow pages. That's where you kind of put your flag in the ground. And I think that there's a lot that you can do from there. When you're sending out brochure decks, you know, the call to actions, you can click them back through to the website, and it's part of that ecosystem. That's not to say that the way that we understand websites isn't going to change and they'll become more dynamic, more gamification. Yes, they will evolve. But I do definitely think for the foreseeable future, there is a need for a website, one that works for the user and is responsive, and they can seamlessly go through your touch points without feeling like, oh, okay, where have I entered? Which is why the website needs to be able to be updated all the time.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So in terms of like consistent updates, obviously, yeah, we do something, you know, this is our game, but I would really like to know your thoughts on what some of those specific examples would be of, like, say that you've built a basic recruitment website. What are some of the things that you can start plugging into it and building on it as you grow and you go, and maybe some examples that you've done yourself at Murray?
Yeah, so I guess if I look at our two most contrasting verticals, water and then policy. So with policy, obviously a lot of the professionals working within that industry, it's about what's happening right now, sustainability, climate change, net zero target. So the newsroom in that sense, which they're obviously very familiar with, policy, public affairs, our news section of the website had to be quite comprehensive to be able to share that information. And, you know, we have an ambition to grow that even further for our thought leadership pieces, having guest articles on there. And it's something we tried to start doing with the old website, but really it just didn't work because the ability of the old website just didn't support that. So building that into a real newsroom hub to help push that thought leadership piece. So that was really important for us to be able to build a centre that could do that. Looking at water, the water engineering industry is very complex. There's a lot of terminology and they work in AMP cycles as well. So obviously the people working in that industry understand the models and the process in which they're operating. Trying to communicate how we can support with talent within that can be very complex and sound very boring, and there's lots of words, and it's not ideal for the standard website. And so we basically created a set of videos, explainer videos, which spoke about each year of the AMP cycle and how we supported talent within those. So they're lovely little graphics, again, trying to show water plants and things like that. It's helpful from a graphics point of view. And so you'll find on their website, they've kind of got that ecosystem on the videos, which will just keep growing to like a library. So communicating with that external audience is a lot easier to do through video content, which slightly looks like gamification, whereas policy, we wouldn't have that at all. That's much more about the written, the press release, the article.
Right. Yeah. And this is like the benefit, isn't it, of doing that initial research and really understanding your market. It's so easy to, you know, we worked on projects like this where we have to steer it, and they'll just say, well, why don't we just use the same template across all 5 websites in our group or something, so they all stay the same? Or actually, you probably have very different audiences for each one, like you've got between those sectors, and they've got different motivations and different information you got to go across. So very smart, Jade.
Thank you. I think we've got one of the things that I took over from Aero actually that I found worked quite well was what I'd labelled the talent showcase. I've currently brought that over just for our technical talent in Murray. We might roll it into policy. And that's quite neat for the recruitment sector, because when we've got a candidate that we think is really quite cool with some good headline achievements, we basically put them on this little talent showcase page. And it basically just spotlights them as a particular candidate, and it just gets updated as and when the guys basically give me information. So if they're not passing across that information, it doesn't get updated in a while. And they go on there, and it allows people to see candidates that are available right now with a specific skill set and where they are located in the market. So for example, in San Francisco, open to permanent work, these are their key achievements, looking for a role in electric cars, for example. And for the recruitment market, that's quite cool and quite quirky to be able to have them. And as I said, you can build that into your ecosystems to send them out an email of your talent showcase and have it click through to the website. Then hey presto, they're on a different touch point where they can go and explore different areas of the website and hopefully make an inquiry.
Yeah, amazing. And I think for some sectors, something like that is super good, super impressive, and is worth the effort and time that it takes, because for some of these consultants, the fee could be really large, couldn't it? So it could be the cost of building a whole new website with an agency just for that one consultant showcase. So really like that idea. It's a really good idea. But final few questions on the brand split, and then we'll go into our quick fire question rounds, and then I'll let you go. How long did the whole sort of branding process, getting the website built and making that change overtake?
I think we have been talking about, well, I have been talking about it subtly and having it in the back of my mind for a while, which allowed me to capture things that I saw mentally and screenshot things as and where I saw them over quite a few months coming into it, because I knew where we wanted to get to. I just wasn't quite sure where that was going to turn up in my strategy. Going into 2023, I knew that it was going to be the first half of the year in which we were going to do it. So I was prepared for that, and I was getting my tech stack ready. I was getting my suppliers ready, my content ready, the internal communications ready in terms of how I was going to manage all of these different teams and then collecting content and sharing it with me as one process. And then I think it was about Christmas time or coming into January that I had the first presentation. I said, okay, the first milestone that you can do before the website being here is collecting those credibility pieces, so testimonials, case studies, and start to build it. So that was the first thing. Oh, sorry, no, that was the second thing they had to do. The first thing was to give me a list of competitors they thought were good and were not good, to get me started on my analysis and the right track. So once I had that piece of research and I was conducting that, they were then going off and getting their pieces of credibility. And from that, I just started using my research to build structures, liaising with the web development team to say, okay, I've got these two different ideas here. What's your perspective on it? To get some input. And then from there, I just went into full-on design mode. Nobody speak to me. I'm going to live in the office for a while, and basically just started doing that. And then it launched the beginning of April. So actually, the time in which we had announced the internal communications to actually launching the website was quite quick, given that it was 4 websites in one and having that amount of content. But I was also conscious that it had to go before I went away. So yeah, every day and night. So if you take out the nights and the weekends, it would probably maybe have come in June, July.
Love it. And just shows from what you said there, the amount of work and the pre-work that you've got to do for something like this. It is a huge project, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just goes back to the planning and the organization side of things. I think if you can prepare that something's happening, you can't just abandon everything around you and focus on one project. So making sure that you're organizing, you can be flexible with people, and you know that things are going to come in late, or they're not going to come in time. My recommendation is if you've got a deadline of, say, the 6th, and you're waiting on something for somebody else, you give that person a deadline of the 2nd, you set your expectation with the person that is going to come in on the 8th, and then normally you'll probably meet in the middle and deliver on the 6th.
Yeah, great. Love it. And final question. Do you have separate marketing strategies for each company within Murray?
Yeah, so we will do. That's something that we discussed, obviously, as the website was coming out. One of the things that I'm keen to do with the guys, and obviously this isn't here right now because we've literally just done the website, it'll be a case of refining the activity and the campaign plan for them. There's certain different peaks in the month that may work for the water industry. For the policy industry, we may want to advertise in tandem with somebody like Utility Week that have a strong policy voice, and we may want to line up our content themes with when they're talking about those, so that we could build some synergy between them and piggyback. So yes, they absolutely need to be different. And water may have a lot of videos, whereas policy likely won't. It will likely be more of the written word. So it's understanding, okay, what are your core tactics for your area, and how do we deploy those to your audience? And what do your audiences look like? I think that I'd probably touch on that as well in the analysis stage and building personas. So having the little people and refining what are their pain points, what are the value propositions for them. And I definitely suggest for anybody that's doing that piece of work, certainly look at like the MVP model or the business model canvas and try and use those to extract information from your business and then build a persona off the back of that.
Yeah, I love that. Sounds like you've really got them built in your head already. By the sounds that you're just kind of talking through it. Thank you so much, Jade. So I'm just going to finish off with a few quick fire questions that you've probably seen, haven't you? Okay, boom. Right, you ready?
Okay, I didn't fully look at them, so yeah, let's go.
Here we go. Okay, what is your favourite pizza topping?
Meat, anything meaty.
Love it, love it. Best productivity technique, method, how you stay productive. We kind of touched on this, didn't we?
Lists, spreadsheets.
Yeah, and your favourite podcast?
Well, other than this one,
of course,
probably the CIM. Do one that's all right.
Love it. And what company does marketing the best? And it doesn't have to. I'd rather it not be recruitment, actually.
Oh, do you know what? Social media wise, I love Aldi.
Oh yeah.
Their social media is brilliant, and I'd say Ted Baker for the email campaigns. They've lost some money to them over the years from email campaigns.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I might have to subscribe for inspo. And if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be?
Oh, if I didn't have a dog, Australia. Otherwise, I go to Switzerland.
Oh yeah, great choices. Great choices. Thank you so much, Jade. I really appreciate your time. Tons of value in there and really good content. I think that was an amazing episode. And I think anyone that listens through to this point is going to be walking away with some really good tips and advice to sort of level themselves up. If anyone wants to get in contact with you or talk to you, what is the best method?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or you can email me, Jade Brar@murraymcintosh.com. I'd love to help, even if it's just, for a chat or a scream or whatever it may be.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Jade. I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.